The Gilded Age is back, and Season 4 is not easing you in gently. It is walking straight through the door, sitting down at the most expensive table in New York, and demanding everyone's full attention, because this season isn't just continuing the story, it is forcing every single character to finally face the consequences of everything they have done to get where they are. And if you thought the drama of the previous seasons was intense, you have absolutely no idea what's coming. At the center of it all, as she always is and honestly probably always will be, is Bertha Russell, the woman who spent 3 seasons clawing her way into a society that was built specifically to keep people like her out. And by the end of Season 3 she had done what everyone said was impossible. She had shaken high society to its foundations and forced acceptance where there was once nothing but closed doors and cold shoulders. But here is what the show understands better than almost anything else on television right now. Every victory in this world comes with a price tag, and Bertha's is starting to come due. The backlash is quietly building around her. The people she displaced are not gone, they are simply regrouping. And at the very heart of this new tension is a woman who has been watching and waiting with the patience of someone who has never once doubted that her time would come again, Agnes Van Rhijn. Their rivalry has always been one of the most electric dynamics on this show, but Season 4 is sharpening it into something far more personal and far more dangerous. Because Agnes doesn't simply represent wounded pride, she represents the entire old guard, the tradition and the social order that Bertha has been dismantling piece by piece. And Agnes is not the kind of woman who reacts emotionally, she is the kind who waits until she sees the exact crack in your armor and then moves with surgical precision, which means Bertha is not just fighting for her place in society anymore. She is fighting for everything she has built, and the stakes have never been higher. And then there is George Russell, and this is where the season gets genuinely complicated in a way that is going to keep fans up at night, because on the surface his support of Bertha looked like a husband standing by his wife, but if you watched that moment carefully something felt off. It felt performed, it felt like a man doing what was expected of him rather than what he truly believed, and that emotional distance between them is not something this show is going to let quietly disappear. George Russell is not a man who compromises his principles indefinitely. And if he feels that Bertha has crossed a line, especially when it comes to decisions that affect their family, that internal conflict is going to grow into something that threatens the one partnership that has always been Bertha's most important foundation. And yet, because this show refuses to be simple about anything, there is still something between them worth fighting for, because these two have survived storms that would have destroyed lesser relationships. And the question Season 4 is really asking is whether this particular storm is the one that finally breaks them or the one that ultimately forces them to be more honest with each other than they have ever been before. Marian's journey is also reaching what feels like a genuine turning point, and fans who have watched her navigate the impossible expectations placed on women in this era will feel the significance of where she is headed. For seasons, Marian has existed in that suffocating space between who she is expected to be and who she actually wants to become. And something shifted recently, a moment where she found herself capable of making a real difference, of stepping outside the carefully drawn lines of her world, and that experience appears to have awakened something in her that Season 4 is going to explore in a much bigger way. Her relationship with Larry has always been full of genuine potential buried under hesitation and mistiming, but if they are ever going to find their way to each other, they are both going to have to do the harder work of becoming who they need to be individually first. And this season might finally force that reckoning into the open. Peggy's storyline remains one of the most emotionally grounding and socially honest parts of this entire series, because while everyone else is battling over ballrooms and dinner invitations, Peggy is navigating a world that demands she prove her worth over and over again to people who have already decided their answer before she walks into the room. Her relationship is one of genuine warmth and mutual respect, which makes the obstacles she faces from the outside world feel even more unjust and even more real. And Season 4 is likely to push her toward a moment of reckoning. A point where she decides that her value is not something that requires anyone else's approval, and that realization, when it comes, is going to be one of the most powerful moments the show has ever delivered. Beyond all of these central storylines, the Gilded Age has always understood that the quieter connections, the ones built slowly on trust and genuine feeling rather than strategy and ambition, are
It's
often the
pushing
ones that
everything,
leave the
anything
deepest
we've
mark,
seen character
and
into a
season 4
place
will
here.
continue to honor
And
that
then we
balance
start to
between
have
the
real
grand and the
consequences. Season
intimate,
4 is almost
between
this time the
consequence
story
and
feels where
warmth,
their choices
between
find
the
a bigger,
ruthless pursuit of
deeper,
power and the
and
very
far more
human
intense.
need for
The
something
Gilded
real.
Age continuing
With
the
its
drama
expected
before
arrival in
relationship has
2026,
survived difficult
the
moments before.
anticipation surrounding
And if
this
there's
season
one
is
thing that
already at a
defines
level
them,
that tells you
it's their
everything you
ability
need
to
to know
fight
about
through
how deeply
challenges.
fans have
The real
invested in this
question is
world
whether
and these
this time will
characters.
be society.
And if the story
While Bertha
delivers
has
on
been
the
busy
extraordinary
breaking rules and
foundation it
creating
has
a new
built,
order,
season 4
Agnes
of the Gilded
represents
Age
the
could
old guard,
absolutely be
the
the most
tradition that refuses
transformative
to
and
disappear.
unforgettable chapter
Season
yet.
4 is
So make
likely
sure
to
you are
turn their
subscribed
rivalry
and have
into something much.
notifications
The new
turned
season
on,
is not
because
just
when this season
it's pushing
drops,
everything,
you are
anything
going
we've seen character
to
into a
want
place
every
here.
breakdown,
And then we start to have
every
real
hidden
consequences. Season 4 is
detail,
almost
and
this time the
every
story
moment
feels where their choices
explained
find
right
bigger,
here.